The stars are out. The planets are aligned. It's Vlogaday 486. You probably expected that to rhyme. Not that kind of wizard.
Whoa! That's getting cut. Maybe not now that I've said that. Hold on. I'm gonna... Oh, yeah, I gotta go to the post office today. I got a lot of crap to get done today. Oh my gosh, it's really cold outside. Welcome to the party, everybody. This is Tuesday, which means for you, it's right early Wednesday, and that means that today, it's slotted to talk about Into the Nanten. All this. I really feel like I need to remind you, I did not put this up. My landlady is actually a fan. She's probably my wisest fan. She's 82 and she likes these books for some reason, which is crazy. I don't know why I undersell my work all the time. We're talking about these two books right here, Into the Nanten. This is the first one, this is the second one. Today we're going to talk about the production of these because these were actually originally produced as the world's first real-time fantasy blog. And if that doesn't make any sense to you, that's because it doesn't make any sense to anybody. But we're going to talk about it today. We'll talk about the writing process, producing it, working with an artist and a voice actor, putting everything together and making it one cohesive story that released episodically over the course of something like 7 months, over 2 seasons, so 14 months of work in total, not including everything that went into it beforehand and everything that came after it. How it was successful, how it was unsuccessful, and where it's going to go from here. So for those of you who are fans of Into the Nanten that have been wondering, what about Journal 3? Maybe we'll talk about that today. Maybe. No promises. In the meantime, I need to go for a run. You guys, please do... I was going to say you need to subscribe to me, but that seems really pushy. Please subscribe to me. I have, again, that little sign up there that has turned invisible for me. Like the video if you're enjoying it so far. Leave a comment below. I'll give you things to comment about, I'm sure, along the way. I'm gonna go for my first run of the week because I only went for 1 run last week too, and that whole like go for 3 runs a week goal on the board is going very well unfulfilled. But we are 1 subscriber away from hitting 2,500 subscribers today, so that's really cool. We'll see how that goes. Let's go run. Four miles at just under a 9-minute pace, which is fine, but still kind of sad. So I need to be running more. I was really looking forward to this. I've been wanting to do it for the last few days. Finally made space for it. We need to run more. Mike, we should probably run again sometime soon. We need to figure that out. If you even watch my vlog anymore, I don't know if you do. So, Into the Nanten. First we'll talk about where the idea came from, then we'll talk about the execution, and then we'll talk about successes and failures and the things that I learned along the way. But first I did take a shower because this is gross and nobody wants to see this. So Into the Nanten, in a nutshell, came around just after I left the Congo. So this was like 3 years ago now, something like that. I was transitioning into a new role, a new job as a consultant in the States, and I was thinking about, okay, what do I write? I've been trying for a long time to come up with something episodic. I was really trying to come up with something episodic that would hopefully build an audience over time, because with writing it's really, building an audience when you're writing is really difficult if you haven't figured that out already. Trying to figure out a way to like release things on a schedule, hopefully build an audience for something, and I've been trying to think about that for a long time. That's where the 7 Deaths came from. I was writing parables and other things. All of it was a little bit too meta. It was too deep within the world. You know, people aren't gonna sign up to read a bunch of internal workings of a world unless they're already invested in it. A little bit too nerdy. And then I read a book that had been recommended to me by a friend called Blood River by Tim Butcher, and it kind of pulled everything together for me in one fell swoop. Tim Butcher, basically I only read the foreword of Blood River before I was like, this is it. It all came together. You can look into Tim Butcher's book, but basically it's his own like self-gratifying way of, he just wanted to go explore the Congo River and recreate Stanley's discovery of it, which was silly, to put it mildly. Just him talking about the danger of going into the jungle, making this journey by himself, everything that he would face, made me think this is it. I want to tell the story of a guy who's exiled into the world's most hostile jungle in search of a man that he hates, much like Stanley was looking for Livingston, only in this instance, he hates Livingston. I wanted to send some famed warrior who's fallen from grace, a high-level person who's been forced into exile and disgrace, and follow him and see what his adventure was. And so his journal is what the story would become. The reason we call it the world's first real-time fantasy blog, whether or not it's actually the first, so I guess I'm not 100% sure, but was because every entry was released in real time. So every day when he wrote, if he wrote in the morning or if he wrote in the evening, whenever he wrote it, it posted live on the website. So you actually followed along day by day. And if you were following along, you couldn't get any farther ahead in the story than anyone else who was reading it along at the same time. So it was really, really cool. I immediately called up Nimit because this is the project that I'd always imagined I'd work with Nimit on. I knew that I wanted to do something sketchbooky. I wanted to do something raw and organic, I guess is another word that you could put to it. Nimit was the guy that I wanted to work with on a project like this. I finally came up with the project idea. I reached out to him and I said, dude, we have to do this together. What do you think? And thankfully he was on board. Thankfully I also had a job at the time, which allowed me him as well as pay for everything else that would come along, because it was a pretty solid investment. So the idea was really born of a number of things. My experience living in West and Central Africa, my desire to process all of that and try to think through it to a degree, as well as just years of trying to figure out, okay, how do I tell a serialized story within my world in a way that's unique and interesting and fun for me? And then I turned it into basically a writing exercise where I forced myself to write all the time, but I never wrote the whole thing out completely. So let's get into execution, I suppose. Execution. Carrying this thing out was an interesting feat. If you ever want to make a blog, one of the big things that's really important is to make an editorial calendar, right? To set yourself up for success by planning things out. I pre-wrote about 2 months of entries for Into the Nanten and tried to stay about there, but I wanted to be interactive with the audience. I wanted to see how things grew. I planned out character arcs for a number of the characters. I should have planned out character arcs for more of the characters, honestly, but I planned out these arcs for the characters and kind of figured things out ahead of time, but then I let it find its way there in a way. We wandered through the jungle together, which was really fun because then fans of the series were able to email me and say, hey, I bet this is going to happen. They sent me their fan theories, and it actually affected a couple of really major events within the story, so that was really, really neat. But basically the way it worked was I would write about 2 months of entries, I would give those to Nimit, and then expected Nimit to keep about a month's buffer going at all times because we just, that way to stay sane, right? We always had a month's worth. I knew it was coming. I could plan it out. I could actually put it in WordPress and schedule the posts so that I didn't have to actively be doing it. And then I was actually also writing tweets because we had multiple Twitter accounts that were interacting as well, so you could kind of see the thought processes of the characters. So I was pre-writing out all of those tweets that were kind of little clues to each entry, and then the entries would come out and you'd see what the tweets were about. All of that was going on all at once. Of course, Nimit never really stayed up on that buffer. We cut it really close. There are a couple of instances, like I remember, I think I was in a taxi on my way out of the airport in Chicago. I was in the back of a taxi, hotspotting off my phone, photoshopping the entry he just uploaded to me into the entry as it went live like 15 minutes later or something. I was that much of a slave to the schedule because I was like, I want this to be authentic. I want it to look and feel the way that it should. And when he says I'm writing at night, I'm writing in the morning, about that time in the day, depending on how the story is going, is when it should post. And so I did. And that led to some really stressful moments. But Nimit was great to work with. Overall, we got a lot done. And it was a lot of work. I think in total, he ended up doing like 180, 170 unique illustrations for the series, which is really, really crazy. The first one went well. We had fun with it. It grew to a certain degree. And so we decided to kickstart the second season. We put it on Kickstarter because it was pretty expensive to do. And I wasn't making any money off it. I was just spending money on it. Still didn't make any money off of it in the end. But we put it on Kickstarter to say, hey, if you guys want to help. But really what was more important to me about the Kickstarter wasn't, it was nice to get a little bit of help financially with it, but it didn't end up being much. I think we raised like $7,000, and I think maybe 1 or 2,000 of that ended up actually going towards the project. I used most of that money to make some really, really cool swag to give away to fans, because I thought this was going to be a really cool opportunity to get people that much more involved. Not the best business choice in looking back, but definitely was really fun to do and to make all that stuff. We launched the second season, same thing, but this time we added a voice actor to the mix, and his name is Dennis Kleinman. That was a drink of coffee for dramatic pause. Dennis, I found just by doing a bunch of research on voice artists on the internet and discovering that his voice was pretty much perfect for it. He's South African and doesn't have much of a South African accent, but just enough of one to give you that adventurous feel when he speaks. And that's pretty much exactly what I was going for. That whole, like, it feels like you're in the jungle when you listen to him pull Marcellus's words out. That was really great. Working with Dennis was awesome. I basically gave him work in advance similarly to Nimit, and then he would send me 1 week's worth of entries at a time, a couple weeks in advance, so that I could get them uploaded and ready to go live with each entry. So basically, Into the Nanten became a real-time podcast as well as a real-time blog. And the way that that would work is I would basically sit down, listen to everything word by word, listen to literally everything, make notes, send him back my notes, whether it had corrections or just thoughts as far as his performance. And at the beginning, there was a lot more information that I gave to him, but within a few weeks, really, that started to disappear. Eventually, I didn't have to give him hardly any notes unless I was just correcting the way he pronounced something or, caught something that he might have missed in his editing. But he really nailed the character. And I feel like after a few months of working on the first season, he pulled the second season out brilliantly. It was really, really fun to work with. I highly recommend both of these people. Both of these guys are really talented artists. So there's a lot of feedback back and forth. Definitely gave them as much as I could, but I trusted them. For the most part, I got really, really great results out of both of them. And that goes back to just choosing a good team that you can trust, give direction to, and then let go. Really important if you're going to collaborate with other artists. Now, what I learned from it, that's one thing, I guess, although I guess that was more what I practiced. I learned a lot of things from running Into the Nanten. The successes and the failures. The success was, as a writing exercise, it was good. It got me writing a lot. It really improved my writing. I was always writing. I was always actively refining, going back, rethinking it. And it got me up to that level where I could be producing all the time. I think it's one of those things that really helped boot camp me into being able to vlog every day, because I was always having to come back and work on it. It was no break. When it was going for 7 months at a time. You were on. So that was really, really valuable. The other thing, it was also a success just in the fact that it built a body of work, that it did build up some fans, and that we did have one crowdfunding success. However, we also had a crowdfunding failure. And part of that is because the project itself was just really expensive, and jumping straight into that without an existing audience to support it was really risky. Why did my phone just die? I think I'm already down to 5% battery life. We're gonna have to continue this in a bit. So I just sat down to grade all of this, which is going to take me a bit. It's not normal. Grading stuff's not normal for the English teaching job, and they are paying me to do it, which is really nice. But I do need to do it because I'm going to be sitting down and listening to all of these people present tomorrow. But I don't have any real pens. I have a bunch of like little artsy pens like this, and I do have one red one, but it's not really meant for like mass grading like this. And I did end up snagging one of these. Ceci is the institute that I work for. One of the teachers was nice enough to give me this, but I need a red one. And also, I don't know how long this will last. So I can't believe how long it's been since I've had real pens, and I still don't really want to spend the money on them, but I kind of need them. So I'm gonna go get pens right now. That's really exciting. And then I'll tell you more things I learned from Into the Nanten. This is still a vlog, you guys. I still am living my life. All right, let's get out of here. My laundry dumped out here. Ugh. Gosh, that only took forever. It might have taken me, I had to take a dinner break at some point. I think it took me like close to 4 hours, which is a lot more than I was supposed to. But I've now edited my vlog as well, and I haven't gone over quite everything with Into the Nanten. I learned a lot, but like I said, some of it was from the negatives. For example, basically the format that I chose and sending it live without having any time to revise it, to send it by any editors, especially for the story side, not to develop the story any further, meant that it is stuck where it is. And there's a lot of work that I would like to do on the story overall. I would really like to go back and revise it and make it better. And I have an idea for that down the line, but for now, I mean, it is what it is. That was a huge drawback, really, in the end. I think a lot of people really enjoyed following it day by day, but at the same time, as a story, especially just as a standalone book, I would really like to go back and revise it. And so we'll have to see if that happens or not. So that was a big thing. And obviously the benefit though was that in writing and then having to edit and revise my own stuff over and over again, there's still mistakes that I make for sure, but you can see that my ability to write and put out at least a coherent first draft is much stronger because I was consistently publishing effectively a first draft. The other thing was that with the expense of it, doing a project like that, again, you really want to have a fan base built up already before you throw yourself into something that expensive, where you're paying for art, you're paying for voice acting, you're paying for all this stuff just to produce something, which is why I've never made money on it. It's always been a loss, and which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, I think that art is worth its own investment. Like, I don't think there's any problem with that. It's just that when you find yourself in a position where you actually need help and you can't get it, that's where you're stuck, which is what happened with the third season. And that failed attempt, we did go to launch the third season and just ask for too much, which is okay. Because that was one time where I was like, I'm not asking for what I know I can get, I'm gonna ask for what I actually need. And it was too much at the time. And I think down the line we'll be able to launch it again, and I think it'll succeed. That's definitely something that I want to do in the future. But right now it's simply not possible. So those are a number of things that I learned from the whole process, for sure. I also learned definitely to stand my ground on certain creative things, even though I highly, highly recommend that you trust the artist that you hire and you let them do their job 90% of the time without your interference. There's that 10% of the time where you know what you want for your own project to match your vision, and you do need to stand up for it. There are a couple of illustrations Nimbit did that I did have to reject or repurpose. Similarly, with Dennis, there were certain things that just I really wanted to be a particular way. But if you do it appropriately and politely, and with consideration and with a level of tact, cohesive thought, the ability to actually express exactly what it is you're expecting from your talent, then I think that they really respect that and you end up getting a better product out of it because everybody's on the same page. So I think that's really, really important. But of course, you have to trust yourself to do that. So that's a little bit about Into the Nanten. If you have any questions, let me know. The protagonist is definitely very colonialist. He's quite the self-superior, misogynistic a-hole, and that's how he starts out, at least, so give him a chance, because a lot of it, not that I was entirely that way myself going into it, hopefully, but there are a lot of those tendencies within myself that in living in West and Central Africa for a number of years, I hope were purged out of me, and I know a lot of them were, and so a lot of this story, Into the Nanten, actually runs in tandem with my own. So if it's your thing, I'll link to it for sure. Give it a try if you want to read it. And then tomorrow we're back to, I gotta sit and all those papers that I graded, that stack, I'm going to be sitting through all the presentations that go with them. And I'm sure they're going to be really exciting. So just be glad I don't have to film that. I can't even film that stuff. You guys don't have to. Anyways, I'll see you tomorrow.